welcome to another episode of the Full Quarter Podcast. This is your South African cricket podcast. We do it weekly, and we talk all things South African cricket. We had a we had a really nice podcast on Thursday, with Lazard Williams. Please do go check it out. We also have an interview with Prenelin Subrian previously, and also we talk about the Major League Cricket, which starts this week. And interesting thing there is that the first game is sold out, and the Texas Super Giants have a new fresh kit. It's yellow with the red sleeves. So the sleeves, they've only changed the little thing is everything's yellow, but just the color is different. So the South African one is green, the Indian one I think is blue, and now the American one is red. But yeah,
Red.
that's the cricket's going on. SA under 19 is also in Bangladesh, learning the tricks of the trade there. If you listen to Lazard Williams's our conversation with Lazard, you learn a lot more about how there's a lot of adaptation and a lot of skills that you can learn from tours like that. So I'm happy that they are there. But today we're going to talk about CSA Awards, and if you want to stick around, and I ask that you do, we're going to talk about the SA20, the pre-signings. There's going to be an auction in a couple of months, or in a month's time. We're in the trading and retaining and buying out period up until the end of the month, and then we'll find out if there ever has been a trade. Remember Quinton de Kock and IPL got traded to, I think it was Delhi from somewhere, and it was wild. I was like, this could be the new thing, but then nobody else did it after that. But yeah, I've got Tim here with me, and we're going to be talking a lot about that. So, Tim, I know on my side of the world it's snowing. How's it on your side of the world?
It's cold, but not snowing. If people are on their social media networks and looking at nice, clear pictures of Cape Town, yes, it's clear, but it is cold. We don't have the snow, but it is cold. Otherwise, good, dude. Otherwise, all good. Looking forward to some cricket again. And obviously this chat as well. So all good.
Sure. Okay, cool. Let's go into the first one, the CSA Awards. So on Friday night, South African cricket had its marquee evening where we, at the end of the season, we celebrate those who've done well. Everyone eats well, everyone dances well. It's a nice little production by Supersport, really awesome there. Lesego, well done on your hosting duties there. And we then go into a point where we look back for 12 years and we try 12 months, not 12 years, and we try to decide who actually is one of the who performed well across the season, so domestically as well as internationally. So I'm going to put up the list of winners. I'm going to start with the domestic winners, and then domestic season winners, and then we'll talk about the international ones, right? So move the banner. Division 1 4-day player of the season was won by Bear Swanepoel of the Warriors. He was the number one wicket taker in that season. One Day Cup Player of the Season, Ryan Rickleton of the Lions. CSA T20 Challenge Player of the Season, Babanye Nqenqe, which I loved. I really liked this one. Coach of the Year for Division 1 was Mandla Mashimbi. This one was interesting, but we'll talk about it, Tim, once I've gone through the list. Div 2 4-day Player of the Season, Rivaldo Moonsamy of Northern Cape. One Day Cup Player of the Season was Joshua van Heerden, and it should be Div 2 Coach of the Year, not Div 1, apologies. Mark Charlton of Northern Cape. Domestic Player of the Season, Ryan Rickleton of the Lions. Domestic Newcomer of the Season, Jordan Hardeman. And Saka MVP award went to Bear Swanepoel. Any surprises here, Tim?
The only surprise, and we love him over here at Full Quarter. We've had a chat with him on the podcast. Mm-hmm. But the only surprise that you would say, is a slight surprise, is Mark Charlton getting the Coach of the Year. We know that we know they won trophies this last season. They know they were good overall. We know he's done fantastic work at the Northern Cape, but they weren't promoted. the team that were promoted, their coach did not get Coach of the Year. And that always, whenever you look at Coaches of the Year across sports, that always feels a little bit strange that the coach
Yeah.
of the team that's not promoted does not actually get the trophy.
Yes, and I think for me that's the one. But I think let's talk about this. I think I thought the one that was a little bit more open outside of coach. I thought Division Two Coach of the Year was done with the head coach of the KZN Inland getting it. I thought that would be it. I knew Mark and Northern Cape dominated for half the season, but the other half of the season, it just didn't do well, especially in the limited overs format. Um,
I suppose the only thing that they were thinking of
mhm.
is that he came in the middle of the season.
Mm,
That's the conundrum then. Then you start to look at other coaches who were there the entire season. Paul Adams was there at Eastern Cape. He was also in terms of the nominees. So that's probably why KZN's coach, name I forget the name at the moment, but that's probably why he did not get in as the get the trophy for that particular division,
yeah.
because he wasn't there for the season.
No, I get you, and I think for me that's probably one of the things because he wasn't even nominated. It was Pete Botha for the Badgers, and Paul Adams for the for the Eastern Cape. So effectively, Mark wins this one, but you have a lot of question marks around, obviously, but he wasn't necessarily promoted. The other one that was I thought was up in the air was our Coach of the Year, Mandla Mashimbi, because obviously in Division One you had the Lions winning the One Day Cup, you had the Titans winning the T20, and then you had the Dolphins winning the 4-day series. And so I thought, okay, fine. So then, which team generally performed better out of the three? And the more consistent team, which was the Titans, won. Even though I thought the Titans, from a 4-day series perspective, weren't that great. One Day Cup also thought they weren't too great, but I think the Lions had a okay-ish 4-day series. T20 was horrible, and the Dolphins weren't great at T20. They won the 4-day, but even in the One Day Cup, they weren't there and thereabouts. So it was quite a because even Western Province won, and I was like,
It was an inconsistent season, I think, for all
yeah,
teams. Their purple patch happened at strange times. So, in terms of Division 1, that was actually a much more difficult one. As
yeah,
you rightly pointed out, to talk about different teams, that's a lot more difficult. But the teams up north, they always get favoritism. That's just a fact.
okay, okay. That's a wild statement. Okay, then fine. I'll take the favoritism. The other okay. So let's talk about Bear Swanepoel. I think he's had a great season. He managed to get into the SAA team. Really, really good guy. Coming out of Division 2, showing the promise that he is, and he's been rewarded with that season. Really awesome leading wicket taker from a fast bowling perspective. Actually leading wicket taker throughout the tournament. And I thought he was really great, and he was rewarded. Joshua van Heerden, I think he's at the Titans now. And yeah, he won
Correct.
their 4-day series player of the year there. Really, really good players, and it's great to see the progression. Guys coming out Division 2, going to Division 1. Obviously, Josh is now going to the Titans now. But Bear Swanepoel, showing that there's players in Division 2 that that are putting their hands up.
Yes, and this is a point that Mark Tartan brought up when we chatted to him, that actually he doesn't think there's enough focus on the Division 2 setup
Yeah.
in that, particularly the white ball stuff. There
Yes.
definitely are players within the white ball setup that could be getting SA emerging selections to see whether they actually can take that step up before a Division
They
1
go to
side
Division One.
goes and takes them away from the Division 2.
Yeah, and yeah, Josh Van Eden winning the one day cup player of the year. Rivaldo Munsami, he went down. He left the Titans, went into Northern Cape, and as we were talking, I think we had a
We
podcast about
did.
this the beginning of last season to say that some of those guys who dropped down, now is the time you need to have to put down the currency and try and see if you can't necessarily promote Northern Cape. And Rivaldo Munsami, top run scorer in the 4 day series, he did really well there. He's one guy where you're like, okay, so we thought Division 1 wasn't good for you, and Division 2 is probably a place that's slightly better for you. So where do we take you? And we spoke about all of this. Obviously, the teams are now solidified, but he is one that if Northwest needed an opener or a top order batter, he's your guy. But I'm really happy that he had a great season, and hopefully this year he can get promotion with Northern Cape and play Division 1 cricket. But it's really good to see some of the names coming through. But Manye, he's going to be quite an interesting player from a limited overs perspective for South Africa, and I think he should be in and around the SA mergings, the SAAs there as well. So yeah, no surprises on that
If
side. Yes.
Yes, I'll just add, for those who've watched a certain Australian white ball players, you just talk about the white ball, a certain Nathan Ellis, very effective at the white ball format. He's played for Australia a few T20s, but Mane is in exactly the same mould.
Yes.
Lots of variety in terms of what he's able to produce with the ball. He has got a bit of tap in the red ball stuff. He's still learning that trade, but when it comes to the white ball, when you think of him, think of Nathan Ellis. Very similar players. One is playing for the national side, but Manye, this coming season, it's not a stretch to say that he will be playing for South Africa sometime throughout the next 12 months or so. It's not a stretch at all.
Yeah.
Talent is there.
Especially for the next T20 World Cup, which is next year. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's hanging around there because I think he's a really, really skillful bowler. Okay. CSA Awards for the international awards. SA Women's Player of the Year, Shubnim Ishmael. She retired, but had a really great season last year. Retired at the end of the season. SA Women's T20 International Player of the Year, Nonkuleko Mlaba. Laura Wolfart won Women's ODI Player of the Year. SA Men's Player of the Year was Anokia. Test Player of the Year, Kagiso Rabada. ODI Player of the Year, Temba Bavuma. T20 Player of the Year, Reza Hendricks, who didn't play at the World Cup, but anyway. International Men's Newcomer, Joel Kutsia. SA Men's Players Player of the Year, David Miller. SA Fans Player of the Year, Sinalo Jafta. And the best delivery that is fueled by KFC was Kagiso Rabada. Bowling Craig Brathwaite was a ball that effectively started on that just outside off on the fourth stump line and literally just hit the top of off and beat Craig Brathwaite defenses. He actually squared him up, which was pretty cool as well. But Tim, lots of debate here, right? I think SA Women's Player of the Year was going to go to someone who had the most consistent, and I think from an ODI perspective for the women's team, so this year from a batting perspective for the Momentum Proteas women hasn't been the best, even with the World Cup final at the T20 coming in. There's a school of argument that Tasman Brits should have necessarily gotten in Women's International T20 Player of the Year. But I think the South African women played like a handful of ODIs as well. And we also went to the Commonwealth Games, and that was a disaster. So wasn't a great season, but Laura, I think she averaged around 40 in ODIs. Just checking here. No, 46, Wolfie. Chloe Tran was a nominee. She averaged 45. but it was 181 runs. Laura scored 278 runs. So you can see that the runs wasn't necessarily there. And Shubnam had taken 14 wickets. So um, I essentially would have gone with Shibnam. I think she had done, but Laura won the ODI Player of the Year. Also think they were trying to spread the love, and you can see all of that. From a T20 perspective, I thought Tasman would win. She had an average of 40, having scored 368 runs. Laura had scored more runs than her. But Mlaba with the 18 wickets and at an average of 15 was the one who won there, and I was really happy for her because she's one who keeps on getting it's like an afterthought in our bowling team. Well, in the women's team.
Indeed, indeed. I think you've hit the nail on the head there with pretty much everything you've said. I think the 12 months that the Proteas women have had, I think it was actually quite difficult to give these nominees to various winners could have won this. As you rightly say, Tasman Boots could have won it easily. She did win Provincial Player of the Year, so she did go away with an award after the evening. I think it was just a case of, you know what, let's give everybody some love. The Proteas women, and then two of the most, what would you say, most effective players of that setup, Laura Velfart and Shubin Imgirl, because of the fact that she's retiring, the fact that the service that she's given the country. This may not have been her best 12 months, but it goes into what she's given over the last decade or so for Proteas women. So I'm not going to take too much issue with the women's awards, particularly at all. I think all three deserve the awards that they received.
And Shibnam took 11 wickets in T20s and 14 in ODIs. So, she was the best bowler of the South African women in the last 12 months. SA Men's Player of the Year, I thought was quite a wide thing. But let's talk Test Player of the Year. Kagiso had 37 wickets, an average of 21. And I think who else was there? Temba averaged 42 and scored 385 runs. Aidan Markram 312 at an average of 44. But here's my reasoning. I'd have given it to Temba. I think he was the best batsman in the last 12 months from our test team. But obviously injuries. I think he didn't play in England. He didn't, yeah. So that's probably one of the reasons why you wouldn't have given it. But for a bowler to have this return, 37 wickets at 21, is unbelievable. And every time I listen to the Ashes and I listen to Mike Atherton talk about the best bowler in the world being Pat Cummins, and I side eye because there's Kagiso who plays less test matches but gets just as good a return than anybody else than as Pat Cummins, and I think he's still a better bowler. So yeah, happy for Kagiso, well done. ODI Player of the Year, Temba, by far, yeah, you can't fight that. 428 runs at an average of 71. David Miller came out with an average of 64 last year, having scored 385 runs. Dehaino Clausen, an average of 58, 467 runs. I don't know. Kia had a really good bowling season, 14 wickets at an average of 25. The person who I thought was missing, but he didn't play that many games in that little nominees list, was Sisanda Magala. I would have given him a shout, but he only had 12 wickets. But he took his 12 wickets an average of 16, which tells me something, that maybe he could have gotten something. But really happy with Timber there. And then T20 Player of the Year, Reza Hendricks, obviously. If they didn't give it to him, it would have been another, like, what were you doing? No, like you snubbed him for the World Cup. You made him sit bench, even though he was the best batsman going into the World Cup, right? And then you're gonna snub him when the numbers tell you exactly what it is. And he averaged 58 last year. David Miller averaged 47. Markham averaged 42, and Riley Rousseau I think averaged 40. So yeah, really happy with the Reese thing. But then the SA Test Player of the Year, SA Men's Player of the Year, could it not have gone to Temba for the consistent performances? But T20 doesn't help him. His case was Anrich is featured in all three formats and has done really well. He was nominated in all three categories, and I think that was the reason why he won that one. In T20s, he took 15 wickets at an average of 14. So, yeah, that was quite
Like,
a interesting one there.
if you'd given me these awards for the men's, as we're talking about
Mhm.
now, and you told me that Rabada got that award, I would have had to go back to my wisdom and have a look. I would. I'd have to go back to my wisdom, have a look, see what he did. Okay, fair enough. That's fine. It's because I don't think he had a great 12 months. He was fantastic in Test cricket, but in
Yes.
terms of the level of standard that he sets himself, I think he looks back and he goes, could have been better.
Yes.
Could have been better.
So
And
let's apply that wisdom
so
argument, right?
yeah,
So if I told you Anok Nokia won SA Player of the Year, would you have
yeah.
gone back to your wisdom?
No, no, because of the transformation of Nokia over the last 12 months. Nokia has gone from somebody who needed Rabada there beside him. He needed
Mm-hmm.
Rabada to lead that attack. Nokia is now in a position he is
Mm-hmm.
better off if he has Rabada with him, but he is now in a position where he can lead attacks if
Yeah.
Rabada is injured, not well, whatever. He is now transformed in that position in the same way that Reza Hendricks. You go back 12 months ago, I was saying, don't touch him with a barge pole in terms of T20
Mm-hmm.
cricket. We've got X, Y, Z. I was wrong. He has gone and he's answered that. There's critics. He's gone and said, my strike rate is too low 12 months ago.
Yeah.
And he's bumped it up. He's bumped it up considerably over the last 12 months. So he 100% deserves that award without any question of any
Okay.
regard. I mean, it shows up that he didn't play in the World
Well,
Cup. I mean, that's for another day. So to answer your question, those two, I don't question at all, at all.
so if I said Aiden Markham SA Men's Player of the Year, are you going to
I will.
wisdom
I am. Yes,
to
I'm
check
going to my wisdom.
what format are you checking? Because he was good in ODIs, he got better in ODIs,
He
especially
got better.
from England series onwards. When he
Yeah.
got backed by Shukri and Rob, we get that. But we didn't play that many ODIs at the beginning of the year. T20,
No.
he was up there.
Yes.
And from obviously from a test arena perspective, he also had that resurgence at the back end of the year. Or is the stink of England still clouding your judgment
It's
in terms of let's go back?
it's clouding my judgment. It's clouding my judgment, and that is why I'm going back to my wisdom.
Okay.
I'm thinking nominee, yes, probably nominee, absolutely top three,
Hmm.
yeah, probably. Winner, no, I'm thinking that's a stretch unless I've missed something.
Okay, fans, let us know what your top three is in your comment section on YouTube, and also on the various platforms that we have there. You can just put in nice little comments there as well. Rate us 5 stars. If it's not 5 stars, let it go. What do you think, right? But I'm going to ask Tim this question. I'm going to ask the fans this question as well, right? Top three. We know Anuk is one. Who does 2 and 3 in SA Men's Player of the Year? Who's your top three?
Harmer.
Oh,
No,
Tim.
I had to do that. It's gonna have to be bowlers, isn't it? after that 12 months, um, it's going to have to be bowlers. So it would have to be, it would have to be Rabada, Nokia, um, and then
Not even
possibly
one top.
Miller, possibly Miller,
So my
possibly
top
Miller.
three.
But again, yeah.
Yeah.
Go on.
My top three is different to yours. Mine is Anrich, Temba, and Miller. For me, if you do well in two out of the three formats, it's yours. And
Yeah.
Temba's been the spine of this team in Test
Yes.
match cricket for the
Agreed.
last 12 months. He also captains the team. So that has to count for something. Captains the ODI side as well, and is the leading run scorer in the ODI team. Yes, T20 was horrible. We can't take away the stink of that World Cup, but Timber needs to be in that top three discussion. And then David Miller. He is Mr. Consistent, Mr. Evergreen. He will only be SA Men's Player of the Year in the year of a World Cup if we ever win a World Cup. Because if we ever do win a World Cup in the time that David Miller is still playing cricket, he will be the reason why we win the World Cup. And it is the year of our Lord 2023. So we do hope that next year's CSA Awards, David Miller is Men's Player of the Year because it just has to be. It just has to be. But he has taken that role in that lower middle order. And he's also a leader, even though he's not as vocal as everybody else. So really, that was my top three. But those are the CSA awards, everyone. If you disagree with the decisions, please let us know in the comment section. We'll be talking about that. Let us know on Twitter as well about that. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic, which is the SA20 pre-signing. So just like last year, teams around this time pre-signed players. And so essentially it's the start of the new season. We're going to go into an auction, but here are a couple of things that you would need to know around the SA20, right? So teams are allowed to pre-sign players. That is good. But if you were in an auction last year and you were a South African player, you signed a multi-year deal. So there are two things they can do for your contract. One is that as a South African player, because you're on a not a 1 year contract. Obviously, some overseas players and some overseas players in the auction were on a 1 year contract. So that's the reason why this pre-signing is here. It's essentially for overseas players to either reaffirm the contract or players who were pre-bought and weren't in the auction who were given 1 year deals and they were South African. So um, not a lot, they actually went to any South Africans that were dropped from a pre-sale process that like last year. But then, so if you're South African and you got picked up in the auction, your contract either will be traded or be bought out, right? And that means you can go back into the auction again. But the international players are the only ones who'll be allowed to be retained. So effectively, the squads and the teams from last year will stay largely the same, unless if you're South African, you get traded, or if you're international and you're not retained. So that's essentially what it is. So we're going to be talking around that, trying to figure out and give you some sort of idea and just have a little bit of fun in the off season to be like, who's going to get bought out, who's going to get traded. Maybe you want Tristan Stubbs in the Pretoria capital so people can cry, things like that. Or Heino Klossen goes back to Pretoria. That would be a thing. But our assumption here is that a trade is a one player for one player. There is a salary cap, so that teams will have to take that in mind because you're also transferring salary. But it would be like the remaining salary. So we still have to get the details around that. Is it half? Is it the full 13 million? Is it, or yeah, for instance, is it whatever you were bought for that year? Does that come over for the next year? My assumption, I think, is yes. But we'll find out as the time goes by. But it's a nice little interesting thing. So please do. If you're interested in this and you think that there's some players that should have been pre-sale, let us know. Okay, here's the list of the players that have been pre-signed. So Joburg Super Kings, Faf, Joel Katia, Moen Ali is pre-signed. There was a lot of talk about Moen Ali last year, but he played at the Emirates. David Viso also played at the Emirates. Is has been pre-signed by the Joburg Super Kings. Sam Cook, fast bowler from Essex, has also been brought in. Zahir Khan, left arm spinner. The difference with this one and last year's Romario Shepherd no longer is pre-bought for the Super Kings, as well as Mahesh Tikshana. Remember, the season for the Joburg Super Kings effectively turned on its head when Mahesh arrived. The Durban Super Giants, every name here apart from Rajapaksa and Naveen Ul Haq were pre-signed. They did not re-sign Jason Holder, but they brought in Naveen Ul Haq, who's a fast bowler from Afghanistan, and we know Banika Rajapaksa, who's a top order batter for Sri Lanka in the limited overs format. He's now going to be joining the Super Giants. Their biggest problem last year was batting. They now added another top order batter into the mix. MI Cape Town, same list as last year. Brevis Rabada, Karen Livingston, Rashid Khan, but they've added another young, exciting Englishman in Tom Banton. Paul Royals, same retention list. Pre-signed players, same as last year. Obed McCoy was injured last year. It'll be interesting to see if he'll be fit and raring to go at the start of the next SA20 season. Pretoria Capitals, a team that doesn't like pre-signing players. Last year they pre-signed two, Miguel Pretorius, Arnold Nokia. This year they add, and this is the only player in SA20 to move up from an auction player into a pre-signed player. That's quite important. Jimmy Neesham. It's an interesting thing. We'll talk about that as to why they would do something like that. And then Aiden Markram, Othniel Bartman were pre-signed last year by the Sunrisers, and this year they've added more international players. Same place out of England. It's like the Sunrisers live in county cricket. David Malan, who used to be the number one batter in the world in T20, and Liam Dawson, who, in my eyes, should have played at Lords when Moeen Ali was injured in the Ashes. Tim, I know you have a lot to say about this. Where do you want to start?
I want to start at the champions. I'm going to start at the champions. The champions have gone out and they've signed quality. They haven't gone out there and decided to pick on somebody who's slightly unknown, somebody who isn't.
Like they did last year.
Yes, they have gone for known quality in David Malan, who I don't think he is at the moment, but he certainly was a very short time ago number one T20 batter in the world. And, I'm talking 12 months ago type of period. Yeah. So that's genuine quality. And then Liam Dawson. Liam Dawson is going to be incredibly effective in this format. Not just with his consistent left-arm bowling, but because he can bat as well. He can come in at 7 and he can whack it. So for me, all they've done is gone, you know what? We want to double up. We want to win another trophy. So they've gone out there and they've done it superbly. The other area for me is the Durban one. I know we talked about the Durban one a lot last season and the mistakes that they made. And it's got the same vibes for me. It's got the same vibes of Reece Topley, will he be fit? Mm-hmm. He's not fit at the moment. If he's not fit, then they're going to have to go and find another fast bowler. Huh? No, yes, absolutely. I don't think that would be a bad thing. Unlike Naveen, I think on our wickets he's going to get tonked. I think he's going to get tonked.
Yeah.
Even though he has got good variety in his pace, similar to Nathan Ellis of Australia. I just think he's going to get found out.
Signing reminds me of. When I read it, I was like, Lance, stop it. Stop it. Because Lance...
Oh, wonder.
and I'm like, oh, dude, you've got fast bowlers like this in this country. Why are we going overseas. But the other thing is obviously a lot of the fast bowlers who are good in this country are contracted under a team, which is why the trading mechanism is there. Do you get what I'm saying? So if you want
Indeed.
Lazard Williams out of the Joburg Super Kings, then give them somebody. Give them Vian Mulder or something. I don't know. But for me, that's where I think our teams might be missing. But yeah, so that one was like Lance Klusner, please. No, not again.
Yeah. It's got the same vibes. Same vibes. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that they're going to fall on their ass again and then find their way
Mm-hmm.
halfway through the season and somehow come together, but it's just got the same vibes for me at the moment.
Yeah. I think for me, the thing is, I didn't expect this list to change much, largely because if you contracted a player in the auction, for you to probably pre-sign them, you'd have to pay them a little bit more. So, for instance, with the Pretoria Capitals taking somebody out of the auction and into pre-signing, it kind of felt as though they felt Jimmy Neesham was of more value than the price that he had last year. And I actually probably have the price here of Jimmy Neesham. Jimmy Neesham went for 3.6 million. So they either had to try and match that amount again and promise me that, or they felt that somebody else. And so that was my interesting thing. Was you could have retained him for the same price. So my assumption is actually Jimmy's actually being paid more, right? And out of probably them thinking that if he if they obviously the discussion on retaining is that we can retain you, he can say no, I want to go into the auction and you could get more money, right? And so it's quite interesting that they signed him early. But then the question for me is the value of the guy, right? You saw what the Super Kings did getting David Batista. Were there any other all rounders out in the country, even on other teams, who could do the same value as Jimmy Neesham? My answer would be yes, but the experience is kind of one of the reasons why he was in that side. He was really important for them in that low middle order with the back, and took some crucial wickets here and there. So I just looked at that and I was like, price point, he's probably going to getting more money. Was that worth it to re-sign him? Similar to the Miguel Pretorius thing last year, that same problem I had. I was like, show me something for me, a reason for me to pre-sign you. Your team got relegated last year, right? You're not one of the premier T20 players in the country, but you're getting a pre-signing contract. Same thing with Corbin Bott. So it's quite an interesting thing for me because I was like, oh, okay, yeah, give me a Mo and Ali. Oh, the best one would have been they could have gone and gotten one of the guys who were the stars at the Emirates, Dwayne Bravo, or what is it, Karen Pollard, but obviously he's like Mumbai Indians, yes, whatever it is. What is it, Andre Russell. That those type of players where I'm like, okay, you're an all rounder, but you've got something. Or here's the thing, right? Durban doesn't want the Jason Holder contract. Trade that for Jimmy Neesham, and you've got Jason Holder at Victoria Capital. That's what it is. But okay, um, I've got a list of obviously all the players that were in thingy, but I think you've got some names here that you are gonna try figure out. So my thing is, so my question is to you is from a trade perspective, right? That's South African player. Are there any South African, and you have to match the trade with the player on the other side, right? So if you want the list, I'll put it up. What trade, like, like, obviously the team's not going to do this, but what's the one trade you would like to make? Or this, I don't know, but like, what's the one that you'd like to make?
Um, that's a difficult one. I know who I would take out, so I've got a list of players that I would take out. The
Okay.
issue I have is then what do I replace that with? That is
So
my
I can help
that
you
is
with the
my
replacing. I'll help you with the
okay. So
replacing.
so without any shadow of a doubt,
Hmm.
I know he's a good player. Maybe when the season starts, he'll find form. But we're talking as if it's happening next week.
Yeah.
So Yadama Milan has to come out of that Joburg side. If I'm
Okay.
Joburg right now and we're playing next week, Yadama Milan comes out.
Okay, so
That's
which team, Tim, needs an opener as explosive as him?
Durban. Durban. And wait, right.
Okay.
And Paul, particularly if they are not going to retain Jason Roy, which
Okay.
I think it's a possibility. So I'm
Oh,
thinking it's going to be the two coastal sides. So it's either Paul or Durban for me. That's going to
okay.
happen. If it's
Okay.
yeah,
So I've got you right. So it's Paul or Durban. So now we go to Paul and Durban. So these are the list of the players who won pre-board that were on the team last year. What do the Lions want in return? Probably a lower order batter.
yeah. I number 6. I can hit it.
So Durban
And
looks like the most likely team. Obviously, you're on the far right. Um, obviously, we're not going to be talking salaries now, but a Dwayne Pretorius for Yanaman
a
Malan.
po- a possibility. A possibility. I'm just looking at my list here if I can see anybody. Um, no. That would probably make sense. Um,
If I'm going to
yes,
Paul,
particularly.
I'm going to Paul. I
Yeah.
want Evan Jones, but I don't think Paul's going to give you Evan Jones.
No. No, they
Okay.
don't. I don't think so either.
Okay, so that's the first trade. Dwayne Pretorius for Yanaman Malan. Okay, that works. Both teams get stronger,
Yeah.
right? And then obviously they've got David Visa, and I know the Super Kings have that. Okay, next name.
The next name. Are we strictly sticking local? Because it's going to be mostly local
Local.
movement.
It's local.
Okay.
It's local. You
Yes.
can retain the internationals.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Um. Then we are going to look at Christian Jonker. I like Christian Jonker, but I think Christian Jonker. I
So
think we need a new freshness within that
so
replacement.
middle order batter, giving you experience in a team that might need experience. Um, can I? So that's Durban. So what does Durban need? Durban need, um, I say a fast bowler of that level, of that price point, right? Um, can I take your Christian Jonker and give you a That's
To
an interesting
Pavlon,
name.
to Pavlon,
Yes, yes, but
because
that
he's going to
middle order
play then.
is pretty stacked there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I get that. You're effectively moving salary here. I like the Darren de Pavillon thinking here. But I think from a value wise, you're effectively giving Durban a starter, and you are taking a guy who didn't play that many games, and for me, that's I'm not so happy about. But to Pavillon and Christian Jonker, that could work. I wouldn't be surprised. I was thinking Ziad Abrams. So you take Christian Jonker, you put him inside that MI Cape Town, a little bit more experienced head in the dressing room, and someone you can put in the middle order should there be an injury. And I think, and Ziad Abrams is a guy who can actually play for you. He's a little bit quick. Just not sure about those Durban wickets. Um, the other team I was looking at is Farisco Adams going the other way. Um, I know
Yes.
he's a Paul guy through and through, but between Farisco and Cody Yusuf, you could do something like that. I think I like the Cody Yusuf Christian Jonker move a little bit more.
Yeah. That would also financially would make a bit more sense.
You're matching.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. No. Absolutely. That would. And I think Cody would actually play more.
Yes.
I think if Cody moved there, he would actually play more. So that would make sense. Definitely.
Yeah.
Um,
Is there
it's
another
yeah.
name? One more?
Let me
This is
think.
our trade machine, the SA20 trade machine, people.
I'm thinking. Ooh, let me think. I'm thinking Marco Murray. So I'm
Oh,
thinking big hitter again. Big hitter.
big
But
hitter.
but
Okay.
but he's coming to the end of his powers. Without being
Marco
too.
Murray was at which team? I'm trying to look here. Was he? I see Mark's. Where's Marco Murray? What team was he on? Oh yes, Pretoria. Oh, okay. So what does Pretoria need?
So,
Pretoria
but Tory
need.
doesn't actually need anything, in my opinion. I think they've got a great balance.
Mm,
But if you're looking at a sort of, what do you think, bowler? Because I think the top six is fine. I think the top six is absolutely, it ticks all the boxes. I'm thinking a bowler here,
a spinner. Yeah.
probably a spinner.
Mm.
Um, so then I'm thinking, I don't know where he was.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, he wasn't in because he was injured. Caleb Silica. So Caleb
Oh
Silica was
yes,
picked,
Joburg Super
but he was
Kings
injured.
for Marco Murray. That could work
Yeah.
because the Super Kings also would take somebody like Marco Murray in that lower middle order, a big hitter, especially with Romario Shepherd not coming back, not knowing whether Leas is going to be Leas himself and the whole Lewis Gregory situation. So yeah, that's cool. Okay, I've got one name that I'd like to throw into the trade machine. That's Carl Verena. Is there a team
Fair.
that can take him?
That's fair. Uh, it'd be interesting. So, who was the keeper at my Cape Town?
Yeah,
It's
they went through a whole
Wolofsson.
lot of oaks. Yeah, Grant
They
Rulofsson. That would be an
Wolofsson.
upgrade.
Yes, it
But
would.
what do
Wolofsson and
you?
Rickleton. Crikey! Oh my
Okay,
word!
give me Wesley Marshall for Ryan Rickleton. I know what Wesley can give me. I'll effectively go like for like. Between you must choose between Wesley Marshall and and I know I'm doing this whole lines thing and Mitchell van Buren at Paul because I think Calverena slots into that Paul side as well,
Yeah.
even
No,
without the
I'm
glove.
going. I'm going Mitchell. I'm going Mitchell. Mitchell's got the bit between his teeth, and Wesley's just he's just chilling. He's just having a great time. And to be fair, I'm not going to shoot him for it. If that's what he wants to do, great, wonderful. Uh,
Yeah.
I think Mitchell is a hugely talented boy, and I think he's one to watch out for the future. So I'm going Mitchell.
Okay. There's another player I'd want from MI Cape Town is Delano Potgieter, but I'm not sure if they'd be willing to give you that. But so here's the thing, right? So now there are a couple of players' names there who've got like 175,000 and stuff like that. Um, I think for a lot of them, they might get bought out. So anybody with a low price point, I would think some of the players and their agents would say we'd rather go into the auction and see what we can get. And I think that'll be quite interesting, and also is going to give teams flexibility in terms of the new auction. Obviously, the what is it? The purse is increased. The salary cap is increased by 5.1 million. It's now 39.1. The last question, well, before we close off, of the international players, who is going to be retained of the teams, of the 6 teams of the international players that went through? Who should be retained?
So that is going to be very interesting. And as soon as I wrote down his name, I
Mm-hmm.
thought of another Aussie, and I would love to see him in. But I'm going to go Matthew Wade.
Oh
I'm going to
yes,
go Matthew Wade. Versatile cricketer, keeper,
yeah,
um, very effective. Just a very
yeah.
effective
He
cricketer.
was in the Joburg Super Kings. He was the replacement for I think it was Lewis Gregory because he never arrived, or George Garton, one of those guys. Yeah. Um, the guys who I think should be retained, Ollie Stone, at was it? MI Cape Town. I know Jofra Archer was also at MI Cape Town. I'd retain him as much as I can. Odin Smith can go in my eyes. I look at the Sunrisers. You can send Mason Crane back on a plane. Retain Ruloff. Adam Rossington needs to go back. I didn't get much from Jordan Cox, so he can go back. Um, I'd retain Bryden Coss and Tom Abell. I'd give Tom Abell one more year. And bye bye James Fuller. In Paul, Owen Morgan, please do not retain him. God, if you retain Owen Morgan, I will. I don't know, but no, please no. Um, and they didn't have a lot of international. Oh yeah, Jason Roy as well. That's a tough one. Jason Roy is a tough one. If he does not want to come, I'm letting him go. But if he says he's keen on coming back, I would sign him. I can I get a better player in the auction? Because I look at it and I'm like, Tom Banton's gone. Unless if he's if like we could get an Aussie to play in the SA20, but it's Big Bash time. But like, who else can be an opener?
Tell you what, Travis Head. Mm-hmm. Travis Head would be a sensational signing.
But would he be available in the middle of the Big Bash?
I think you can get the odd Australian, but that would be difficult. I'm not going to lie, that would be difficult to get.
That's a tough conversation you have with him. If he's available and wants to play, I'd keep him. If he's like, I don't want to play, it's fine, you can go. I even want to put him in the auction because if you put him in the auction, he'll be taken by one of these other teams. Oh yes, Joburg Super Kings, you are definitely retaining Harry Brook if he's available. Oh yes, Matthew Wade was the replacement for Harry Brook. We already know Romario Shepherd's not coming back. Alzari Joseph, you are retaining. Lewis Gregory and George Garton can go into the wind. The other ones, yes, we've done that. We've done MI Cape Town. Pretoria Capitals. Phil Salt, yes. At that price point, yes. Josh Little, don't need to retain. Adil Rashid, yes, retain him. Will Jacks as well. And then, obviously Jimmy Neesham's now been retained or is now a pre-signed player. Kusal Mendes, if that's the price that I can retain Kusal Mendes on at 425,000 Rand, I'm retaining because he was really good when the guys were gone. So Pretoria Capitals could effectively give you the same team and they will still beat you. And lastly, Durban Super Kings. Okay, let's go through this. Chemo Paul, please do not retain. Please don't. Dilshan Madushanka, not so much. Johnson Charles won me over in the World Cup qualifiers. I think he can do something, but he's inconsistent. At 425,000.
And he prefers Emirates T20 as well.
Yeah, so he might as well go. So yeah, I think don't retain anybody, Durban Super Kings, and try to find someone.
Somebody
problem, right? Yeah.
Well, the thing is, as you rightly point out, I think there's going to be a high turnover of English players, but I think it's going to be English for English, as for the reasons we spoke about.
Cooks, those guys.
But I think there's going to be more because, as you rightly point out, if we are keeping Garton, Gregory, Crane, Cox, I think you can make an argument for Rossington for the back end of the competition. I think you can make it up. But for the majority of the English guys, I think you are. It's devaluing the competition. There are guys out there that are better, younger, just better players. That's just the fact that they're just better players. They might be slightly less well known, but they are still better players. The other issue for me is Archer is out for the entire season. So, of the English season, can we guarantee that Archer is going to be fit by January? I can't guarantee that.
Yeah.
So, if you're signing him, you're taking a massive risk. Ollie Stone has been injured for several months. if those guys don't come,
They're
then you're
screwed.
gonna have to find somebody to replace them.
Pong
Uh,
or Wood or okay, not Ollie Robertson.
exactly, exactly.
But
No, not Ollie. Don't touch Ollie with the barge pole. And not in this format. Not in this
yeah,
format,
not in this
please.
format.
No,
Yeah.
no. Mark Wood.
Or who's the other West Indian bowler who made his debut in South Africa? That youngster.
Jaden Seals.
Jaden Seals. He could be interesting
If we're
situation.
getting West Indies players, it must be better quality than we had first year. We had poor quality, and that was because the most of them chose the Emirates. If that's the case, then that's fine. But if we
Yeah.
can get better quality, then we need to do that.
Yeah. There was actually one name there I wanted to talk about from a trade perspective. Cameron Dalport. Is there a market for Cameron Dalport to move from Pretoria to somewhere else?
It did cross my mind when I was talking about Milan, but it came to me later on.
Yeah.
There is a market. There is a market, but he's also
Yeah.
getting to the stage
In
where
his career where he's not the Cameron Dalport we know him. He
thanks,
used to be.
but you can play in the Bangladesh Premier League, for the next couple of years, make good money. Thank you. We appreciate you, but we're going somewhere else now,
Yeah.
and that's
I
a
think-
tricky place to be.
Yeah, I think that's the case. But let's see what happens at the end of the month. Who's going to be traded? If they're going to be trades, who's going to be retained? We'll find out all about that, and we'll have another conversation about that. But I hope you enjoyed our little trade machine at the end of the show. Yeah, let us know who you'd like to be traded, who you'd like to see on your team in the SA20. Remember, please do follow us on not Instagram, on Twitter at Full Quota Pod, and also please do subscribe, leave comments on Spotify as well as Apple Podcasts. We do appreciate them. 5 stars. If it's not a 5-star, just keep it to yourself. Yeah. But from
Don't
that point,
don't do Elon Musk and give 1 star to Threads, please.
yes, we don't want that. We want 5. But outside of that, have a great week. We'll be back next week talking more things cricket and maybe more interviews. Who knows? That's what the world of cricket is. Enjoy the snow and the cold front, which should be only a week. So please hold on. Next week, it's summer. It's the start of summer next week. And you heard it here first. But outside of that, have a good day. Goodbye. And le sale kakahiso.